Hello and welcome back for 2021. Here's to hoping that it's a great year for everyone, and for us, it's great to be back working in the clinic, and hopefully for all of 2021 would be nice. Throughout the month of January on the Glenara Health Hub, we're going to be focusing the content on a topic that we got asked a lot about, and that's weight loss. So there's a lot of information and probably misinformation out there on this topic. So we're going to do our best to give you the science, physiology, and some practical solutions to help achieve your goals for this year. And today we're going to be covering how and why humans gain weight, with some future lives over the next coming weeks around some possible weight loss myths, and some proven methods that can really help in this area. So let's get straight into it.
So how do we gain weight? Body weight is made up of lots of things. It's muscles, it's bones, it's your organs, skin, hair. But what we're mostly going to focus on today and this whole month is body fat. And that's why body weight alone isn't the only measure we should kind of consider for health.
Definitely,
It's definitely a factor, but it's not the only thing.
Yeah.
Weight is made up of more than just fat.
Yeah.
But what makes us fatter? How do we gain fat?
Absolutely. So the conventional thinking and advice over the past 30 plus years is that we gain weight because we eat too much and don't exercise enough, or people are just too lazy, too unmotivated to lose any weight. And for a lot of people, this may sound familiar. This has been the advice and logic for a long, long time. So if we know all this, then why, as a country, Australia, and around the world, are people still getting bigger and fatter? So let's break that down a little bit. So, are you eating too much? Likely, this is true. Overconsumption of calories is not a good thing, especially if you're trying to lose weight. But there's so much more to it than just the total volume of food that you're eating. It's all about what you're eating and also when you're eating that matters, as much, if not more, than the total caloric intake of how much food you're eating. Exercise of all kinds, I think we can all agree, especially here, is fantastic for all aspects of health. It's got so many benefits. However, it's now pretty clear in the research and what we see here in practice as well that exercise alone probably isn't going to help you lose those extra kilos. And however, when combined with a good nutrition strategy, it's a much better approach and can certainly, help and assist the weight loss journey. But just the idea of, spending hours and hours and hours in the gym, or walking for 2 hours a day to burn off the calories, isn't really an effective approach. And this has been proven now. And like I said, it's kind of what we see here in the clinic as well, and one of the things that people ask us about the most. And the last point about people potentially being too lazy or unmotivated is so untrue for so many people, and more likely it's the poor advice from lots of different parties. Whether it's online, there's a lot of misinformation out there online. That's also something to consider as well. So let's go into how we do actually gain weight.
Yeah. So Tom just talked about calories in, calories out, energy balance, eat less, exercise more. Yeah, they sound really good on paper. The human body is so much more complex than just calories in, calories out.
Definitely, lots to it. Yeah.
So how do we gain that weight? And to gain weight, there needs to be some type of signal for the body. Our fat cells and organs specifically, to make or to take on more energy in the form of fat. And we store that fat later for use when we don't have that food or energy available. Which really, in today's society, we're not going to run out of food in Australia. And that signal to the body to kind of store that fat is insulin.
So a little bit of a background on insulin, because it's pretty important in what we go through today and in the coming weeks as well. It's going to come up quite a lot. And it's something that we have touched on briefly in a couple of other Facebook Lives from last year. But essentially, it's a hormone which is produced by the pancreas. And we'll be referring to this as opposed to the artificial kinds of injections that, for example, type 1 diabetics have to use. It's most well known for controlling blood glucose levels. So when we eat a meal that contains glucose, which these days is a lot of things, our blood glucose rises, but it can't stay elevated because high levels of blood glucose can become toxic for your cells. So insulin is then secreted to lower it and maintain a balance throughout the body. But insulin's also got a number of other roles. So it promotes energy storage, so storing glucose in our muscles and liver, and also storing fat in our fat cells and many other tissues and organs as well. So there's one side of the coin, but it also inhibits fat or energy loss, specifically the loss of fat. When insulin is elevated, it's almost impossible to utilize our stored fat stores for energy, and therefore it's going to make it very, very hard to lose any weight. It also promotes growth of tissues, makes fat cells get bigger, makes muscles and bones grow, and possibly even other tissues like cancerous tumors as well, which is why there's more and more research coming out about how bad sugar is for cancer and risk, and then also prognosis once you have it as well. So we know what insulin is now, but what makes insulin rise in the body?
Yeah, and it's pretty much what we eat and what we drink.
Yeah.
So foods and drinks with a high glycemic load, so high in glucose, high in sugar, anything with added sugar, any kind of high carbohydrate meals, they're the things that really make insulin rise. We're in control of what we put in our mouth, and that's the things that make insulin rise. In some people, protein can have a mild impact on insulin as well, but it's the eating often, especially with those types of foods, those high glucose loaded foods that will keep insulin elevated, not just at the time, but then all day long, and that can potentially lead to that weight gain.
I guess especially if someone's having 3 meals a day, plus morning tea, plus afternoon tea, plus dessert, plus an evening snack, you're having sort of 6 or 7 times a day of eating, your insulin's going to be constantly elevated, which, as we know from before, is more likely to store that energy as fat, and much, much less likely to start to use that fat for energy. So it's a bit of a recipe for disaster.
It is.
Yeah.
So how can we bring our insulin levels down then?
Good question. It's basically the opposite of what you've just mentioned. There's what we call therapeutic carbohydrate restriction. So essentially eating less carbohydrates in the form of sugar, in the form of starchy carbohydrates, so rice, bread, pasta, and any kind of processed foods is generally a good way to start. There are also different types of fasting. We won't go too deeply into this today, but essentially if you're spending less time eating and bringing on less of a glycemic load, like Dill mentioned, then insulin will have less of a chance to be secreted, and you'll have more time when insulin levels aren't raised in your body. So with all that we know now about insulin, how can we lose weight?
Yeah. And maybe a better question is how can we access our fat stores and utilize this fuel for energy instead of storing it, and that will then in turn make us lose weight.
That's the key, really, isn't it? That's the key. That's what we want.
We've got to lower that body fat, and to do that we require low insulin, like you just said. So when that signal to store that energy is gone, we can then, again, like you just said, use our fat stores to power our bodies, not the glucose that we've just eaten. So those strategies that you've just discussed, the less time eating, less insulin levels, that's the way to go.
And this is something that we're going to go into detail in next week and the following week, and for the rest of the month with we've kind of given you a brief outline today, but maybe some more specific things that you might want to talk to your doctor about, or talk to your family about, or us about, that can really help you. So a couple of takeaways from today. We've kept it short and sweet. Old weight loss advice is probably a little bit outdated now. The energy in, energy out doesn't really work. The body's a lot more complex than that. And if you're watching this today and weight loss is something that you want to try and get a hold of in 2021, then consider the following. So are you trying to lose fat? That's the first question you should ask. But could you possibly have high levels of insulin? Are you eating often throughout the day? And if so, are you having foods with lots of added sugar, lots of high carbohydrate meals? Everyone is different in how they store and utilize energy, but there's a good chance that insulin might be behind your struggle to lose weight if these kind of things you're answering yes to. So if you've struggled to lose weight in the past, or you wanted to make it one of your goals in 2021, hopefully today has been a little bit of food for thought. So these kinds of topics are actually a big part of our new energy imbalance program, something that the Health Imbalance team has been working really hard on in 2020. We've had a little bit of downtime, so been putting together some programs like this to help people lose weight and improve their overall metabolic health. If this is something you'd like more information on, please get in touch with one of us, and keep an eye on the hub, the Glenara Health Hub, for more weight loss information and some helpful information on what might work for you over the next month. But until next week, have a great weekend.